Hello and welcome. This is Michelle with Paper Stamp Ink. Thanks so much for stopping by my channel today. I love paper crafting and I love sharing paper crafting. I share cards, 3D projects, gift and craft fair items. If that sounds like something you don't want to miss out on, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you get notifications when I post future projects. So today I'm going to share with you the Free as a Bird stamp set and different ways of watercoloring on this to get different looks. So I'll show you these three samples and then we are going to make one together. So the first one I started with this actually on the Whisper White paper and very little water on it, but still gets a soft effect on there. And disclaimer, I am not a coloring artist. So it's not my venue, it's not my expertise, but I think that they turned out pretty darn well. So if I can do this, you guys can do it. And I think sometimes we're more critical of ourselves than anybody else is. So I think this is just a cute little stamp set. I don't know if there's any bird that looks like this, but hey, we're paper crafting and it doesn't have to resemble an actual bird out there, right? So this is that Free as a Bird stamp set. Let me go ahead and bring that in for you guys just before we get too deep into this so I don't forget. But this is the image that I'm using, the birds on the branch. I just think it's adorable. But you also have these fun leaf and floral images and then this cute little individual bird down here, as well as some great sentiments. The other thing that I brought in was these stitched nested dies, and these are great. I love that we get the stitching on there. It's actually double stitching, so the part that is left over, let me grab one of those panels for you. So the part that's left over from doing the die cutting actually has stitching on it as well. So I tried to center this up on when I did my die cutting. I guess I was off a little bit, so I can always trim this down slightly. And then I can use that as a panel for another card, as you know, just kind of a matting layer or a raised panel. So I like that you get the stitching on both sides, and there's so many different sizes in here that you can use. So some that are great for doing sentiments as well. And then this just does a nice stitched line on this one. So if you have a spot where you'd like to just have a little bit of detail, a fun little stitched line is just a great addition. So this video was getting a little lengthy. I decided to speed up the rest of it and do a voiceover so it's not too long for you guys. This card I did on Whisper White, and I didn't dilute the colors too much, so it's a brighter color. So I used a brighter backing panel on it. And I did use those stitch nested dies, so I've got the matting layer on that one. Put a few rhinestones. This one I used the more faded pink paper in there. It's almost like a worn look, and cut off half of the, not half, a portion of that die off the right hand side. And I did some speckles on it by using my pins and used the seam binding ribbon there and a few of the sequins from the woven threads. If you haven't done that ink spackling, it's really fun. I also popped that up on a panel and put some dimension behind it. This one, I used this beautiful tulle polka dot ribbon, and I did this on watercolor paper. So it's a lot lighter look, and I used an embossing folder with it. And I wanted to get that raised up a little bit more. So instead of using dimensionals, I just did another piece of cardstock layer under there. So it raises it, but not a whole lot. It's just a very slight raise off of there, but enough to give dimension. Unfortunately, this embossing folder is no longer available, but use what you have. And then I added some pearls on there as a finishing touch, and I like this real light watercolor look on there. I thought that was a fun one. So those are the cards I already did, and we're going to go ahead and do one together now. I'm using some Ranger archival ink. I found that works best on the watercolor paper, and I am going to press and hold it for a little bit just to make sure that it has time to sink into that watercolor paper. You know, watercolor paper is a little bit different texture, and it's a different amount of it's not as porous, I guess is a good way of saying it. So you want to make sure you get a good amount on there. So I'm just cleaning off my watercolor brush pens and putting some ink on one of my blocks. I use Bermuda Bay for the blue, and I love that bright, bold blue. To get a little bit lighter, you can squeeze some of that water out of your brush, and you can make it as light or as bold as you like. And so I thought there was fun colors. I am not somebody who knows a lot about birds, so I don't know if this coloring is any bird type. If you know, let me know. Put a comment down below if if you know that this is actually a bird, and if not, that's okay. I'm okay with it too, because I think it's pretty colors. So that's what's important. So for those brushes, you just need to brush it off on your paper to get rid of that color, and then you can go directly into another color, which this is the Melon Mambo, which is another one of my favorites for the bright colors. And so I'm just putting some of that on the bellies of the birds there. And I'm going to qualify this video with, I am not watercolorist. I don't do a lot of watercoloring, so I'm trying something new, and I encourage you guys to try new things too. It's fun. Don't feel like it has to be perfect. And actually watercoloring is very forgiving with that too. So have fun with it and let yourself go. You know, it's I use soft suede there for the branch, and then I'm going to come in with some granny apple green. Oh no, sorry, doing the flowers first. Purple posy for those flowers. I thought that was a sweet color, but you know, don't stress over your cards. It's paper, it's stamps, it's ink. You know, have fun and try something. If it doesn't work out, try it again. It takes time. I'm sure that if I do this more often, I will get better, but there are definitely some great people to follow out there on YouTube that do a lot of watercoloring and are very talented at it. So I'm bringing in the Granny Apple Green for my leaves, and I'm going to leave that a little bit brighter. I didn't dilute it quite as much because I like that vibrant green, and those leaves are just little bits on there. So I've got a couple places that it's bleeding onto the background, and that's okay. That's what watercolor does. There are some techniques to not have that bleed, but I'm just going to pat that off to get some of that extra water off of the top because I don't want it too soaking wet. And then I'm going to add a little bit more of that blue in for a couple of the birds, and then use a wash on the back. And okay, there I did what I should not have done. I brought in a towel piece. I thought that I had a clean part of it, but I had a part that still had a little bit of that Melon Mambo on it. So we've got some pink in the background, but you know what? I'm going to go with that, and we're just going to add some more Melon Mambo color into the background. And I actually end up liking that. Just trying to get some nice color in the background there so that we get a little bit, not that real stark white, and it gives that real watercolor look. So I'm just arbitrarily just kind of scattering around some of that Melon Mambo to get a little bit of it into there, and then again dabbing off the excess water so it doesn't take us quite so long to dry. You can set it aside and wait for it to dry, but for purposes of the video, I didn't think you guys wanted to sit and watch water dry, right? So I brought in my heat tool to get the majority of that water off there. And then we're going to get this this panel or this paper out of the way. I did go ahead and cut that down with the stitch dies, and I got some ink on the back of that panel, so hey, we know which side we're going to use. I've got my Petal Pink, I believe is the one I used. Could be Blushing Bright. I believe it's Petal Pink, and I ran that through the Subtles embossing folder, so it's just a really light texture, and I'm going very simple with this card design. I want to keep it just a very clean card, and I'm not going to put a sentiment on it because I like to have cards in my stash that are good for any occasion. So I can always write my sentiment on the inside or stamp and add one later if I'd like to, but when you leave them without the sentiment, it gives you that versatility. Sorry, I am overdoing my my cutting of that panel there. So there we go. And I love again that stitching that we get on that. And I'm just gonna put this straight down on the panel. I know you guys have watched me are gasping, going, she's not using any dimensionals. That's crazy. But I can do cards without using them. So see, here it is. And I did think that that was just way too plain. So I did have to add a little bit of bling in there by bringing in some of those pearls. And so there's a very simple watercolor card. And I hope that it's inspired you to get out your watercolors and your inks and have a little play with watercoloring. So bringing in all of those to show you the samples again. Let me know which one you prefer down in the comments, which is your favorite. And I hope that you give this a try. It was a lot of fun to play with new materials and our new techniques. Until we get together again, I hope that you find some time to grab your paper, Stampin' Ink, and do something creative.